So y'all telling me, it's crazy. These playoffs, man. These playoffs, man. These playoffs. Sometimes I don't know if it's funny to watch the playoffs with your team in it or not, because you can kind of just like relax and watch it, right? Like sometimes that's fun. Sometimes you wish your team was in it, right? But it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder: is there some funny business going on, right? Like it's crazy to think we see some of the worst officiating in the playoffs. So does that mean the NFL, they got something? Okay, a long sleeve for this. They had something going up the sleeve. They had something up their sleeve to make sure that their teams, maybe the bigger market teams, maybe the the teams that's supposed to be there, made it to the Super Bowl. Hmm. It begs the question: is the NFL rigged? Let's talk about it. What is going on, good people? We back at it once again, man. Flock Nation Speaks, your Baltimore Ravens podcast, Baltimore Ravens podcast. And sometimes we talk a little bit of everything else going on with the NFL too, man. As the Super Bowl is set, DJ here, right here, Flock Nation Speaks. We're gonna talk a little bit about this Super Bowl matchup, man. Not necessarily a preview, but just kind of an interesting conversation, right? An interesting conversation that I think comes up probably around this time every single year, right? We hear this conversation every once in a while, right? We'll hear this conversation. We will hear this conversation during the regular season once or twice, right? I think a couple of times a year we hear it during the regular season. But I think when the playoffs start and then the Super Bowl gets formed and then like the playoff, especially like playoff seeding and stuff like that, then the conversation around the NFL potentially being rigged and what, the factors behind it starts to be discussed, right? And the reason it's the crazy part, man. The reason why this tends to be discussed sometimes is because I think it's because of bad officiating more than anything, right? I think it's because of bad officiating is why this becomes a thing, right? This becomes something that we think about because let's be honest, right? Like we've seen some things like a couple years ago with the Baker led Browns when they had a chance to go to the AFC Championship game, if I'm not mistaken, right? If they win that game, because they won the wild card against the Steelers, and then they were playing the Chiefs in the second round, and then we had that bad helmet to helmet no call that ended up kind of turning the game at least in the first half. So you got that, and then you got a couple years ago with the Rams and the Saints in the I think that was the NFC Championship game where you had the horrendous, absolutely awful no call on the pass interference that wasn't right. You had that, and of course you can go back years and years and years thinking about the Dez Bryant catch no catch situation with the Dallas Cowboys, and then this year, right? You got some spotty officiating with this Bengals Chiefs game, right? And it makes you think, like, like, could there be like, because for me, this is my opinion, like as an overall statement, I don't think the NFL is rigged, right? Like in terms of like every game or like big games or big moments are rigged, right? I simply just don't think it's true. I think there's inconsistencies when it comes to the officiating, right? Because the game changes all the time, and there's always these like even with the going back to the Bengals Chiefs game, right? The Chiefs win that game, and a big part of that was the unnecessary roughness, late hit on the quarterback, out of bounds. Mahomes is scrambling, trying to step out of bounds, and then gets hit out of bounds, and then that kind of set them up to win that game, right? To make the game winning field goal to win that game. So those are the type of plays, right? Those type of plays, those season defining calls or no calls from the officials, right? And we talked about this plenty of times. Like, you don't want the officials to decide the game, right? That's the biggest thing. You don't want the officials to be the reason why somebody don't go to the Super Bowl. You don't want the officials to be the reason why somebody wins a Super Bowl or loses a Super Bowl. This is a big thing too with the Patriots, right? Everybody was talking about, back when, when the Patriots were this big dynasty with Tom Brady, and they would always do the little memes with Tom Brady and the referees and the jersey swaps with the referees and the this is the best player on the Patriots team, the referees, right? Bill Belichick's secret meeting with the referee, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you would always get that. And it does make you think, right? Like honestly, like seriously, it makes you think, because like you see a team really not have any success for a long time, and then out of the blue they a dynasty, and they go into Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, and this is the golden boy of, I mean, Brady wasn't necessarily the golden boy at the time, but like he was the big like underdog story, right? Like Brady was the underdog story. But then it makes you think on top of that too, if the NFL wanted to rig, right, the games, and they wanted, and they wanted to make these games decided in the ways that they would, then why would any small market team ever make it to the Super Bowl? Why would the Carolina Panthers make it to 2, right? Why would the Ravens win Super Bowls, right? Like they have superstars on the teams, yes, but like you telling me during the Ravens first Super Bowl in 2000, you telling me you wouldn't rather have, I don't know, the Peyton Manning led Colts, possibly, right? Still young Peyton Manning, like to dispel that narrative of, Peyton can't win in the playoffs. Why wouldn't you go that route, right? Why would you have Tom Brady win so many Super Bowls, right? Like I get making this, possibly trying to make this kid who drafted in the 6th round, like ultimate underdog story, like this, this is the face of our league, like I could understand that. But then, like, even coming to present day, right? Why haven't the Cowboys made it to a Super Bowl in 20, 25 years, right? Like, it hasn't been quite 25 yet, but like in 20 years, they are, America's team, right? Like, they have fans all across. Like, if the NFL was rigged, right, I would see the Cowboys in the Super Bowl more often. I would see the Steelers in the Super Bowl more often. Shoot, let's be honest. The Bills will be in the Super Bowl right now, right? They came into this season as the perennial, this is the team, like, bro, this is the team that's going to make the Super Bowl right here. It's the Bills, right? Josh Allen, he's making his ascent, right? He's obviously the league MVP, you know what I mean? Like he took Patrick Mahomes to the limit last season. Why wouldn't they want that as at worst the AFC Championship game? Because that's what they've been promoting all season long. So like that's the weird part about it, And even with Joe Burrow, like they've been promoting Joe Burrow as the coolest kid in the room, and this is the time for them to win a Super Bowl. Because you want to know why? Because then next year, if they face off again, if it's Mahomes Burrow again, then you really start this dynasty, right? Like the battle for AFC supremacy, right? Like it don't really matter that you've beaten us 3 times in a row now, right? We got the Super Bowl, y'all didn't, and especially if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this time. See, I feel like it builds more up to it, right? Like why, I think it goes back to excuses though, right? Like I think this whole notion that the NFL might be rigged goes back to excuses, and the excuses that we make for our teams, right? And the excuses that we make for our teams not executing. Now, albeit there's some bad calls. There are some calls that literally determine the outcome of games. I get that, right? And there are some, especially in the playoffs, there have been some suspect stuff, right? There have been some suspect stuff. But if you're going to tell me the league rigged, if you're gonna tell me that the league rigged it so that Joe Flacco would win a Super Bowl and throw 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, I just don't see that. Now, could the league have turned the lights off in the Super Bowl to make the game a little bit better because of the ratings? Yeah. But if we're talking about purely off of ratings and wanting people to watch, like, yes, this is a good Super Bowl to have, but wouldn't you rather have like the lineage of the Bills and how long it's been since they haven't won a Super Bowl, and then the fact that the Eagles, they've been there, done that, but they got this young quarterback, right? They playing against this really good defense. What's going to happen, right? The Eagles are going to be here for years to come, but that could be the start of a dynasty on top of that, right? Like I think like that's the thing, right? I think there's better stories to be made if we're gonna go with that route. But it's funny because it always tends to be when our teams lose, right? We're like, oh, the NFL's rigged. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's going on the touchdown. Like, we saw no, you know what I mean? But like it always tends to like lean in that direction, right? Like it tends to lean in that like when our teams lose, oh, it was rigged, right? Um, and it's always interesting. Like I love to hear you guys' thoughts on that because it's one of those things you just get to thinking about it, especially after hearing the Bengals fans complain about, you know, the issues with the referee. And of course we had the Saints have been complaining about this for years and years and years, how nobody wants the Saints in. But then like I said before, like I think there's a difference between rigging a game to make the most money off of it and like literally just inconsistent officiating that causes teams to lose in games, right? Like because like even still, like the Saints, I feel like the Saints are one of those teams too where I'm like, why would the NFL rig themselves against the Saints? You got a superstar quarterback, right? A really good head coach, right? Um, you know, and an area that can thrive off of the fact that they win a Super Bowl, right? This is New Orleans we talking about. Like this ain't like we ain't even talking about like we ain't talking about like Charlotte or like I mean even like Houston. Like Houston's big, but they're not Dallas, right? Like we're not talking about that, right? We're not talking about like Oakland, California or something like that. Like we're talking about like these big market teams with like lineage, like these big market teams that have history, right? And they have Super Bowl history and we almost were their history. So like I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, I think it comes back to excuses. Because even still, like the perfect story is let's just go back. Like let's talk about stories, right? You got this guy, right? And I hate and of course I bring it back to a Ravens aspect of things, right? But you got this guy in Lamar Jackson who has been criticized since day one. He can't throw the ball, right? He can't do this, he can't do that, he can't come from behind, right? Like, he can't throw outside the numbers, all this, that, and the third, right? Why wouldn't you, if the NFL was rigged, right? Wouldn't it make more sense? Like nobody is like, oh my gosh, the Titans beat the Ravens. This is top news, right? No, nobody cares about that, right? Nobody cares that the Titans beat the Ravens that year. Besides maybe Ravens fans who feel. Besides, it's two camps, right? It's Ravens fans who know that was a disappointment, and it's the narrative pushers who know for a darn fact that they can push this narrative of, well, Lamar can't win in the playoffs, and it starts there, right? So it's very, very interesting, right? Like, wouldn't the better story be that this quarterback, right? This black quarterback from Louisville, like from not Louisville's not a small school, but a relatively small school, right? He came out here, won a Super Bowl after everybody doubted him, and on top of that, he's a star, right? Like Lamar Jackson brings in so many more casual football fans than even a lot of these other quarterbacks do, right? It doesn't matter how cool Joe Burrow is, right? It doesn't matter how, relatable a guy like maybe Josh Allen is. Lamar Jackson is relatable too, right? Like he's also relatable, right? He also lets you see like, oh man, like this dude brings in money, right? He sells jerseys, right? And he wins games on top of that. So wouldn't it be the perfect storm for this guy who couldn't throw the ball, right? Who should have switched to a wide receiver or a running back or whatever, who's been called a running back, to come out here, clap back at the haters in week one, and then on top of that, win the Super Bowl in the same city that he clapped back at the haters in at the end of the season. Like that's the story, right? That's the story. The Bills winning the Super Bowl this year, that's the story, not the Eagles. Because here's why. The Eagles were 8-7 last season, right? The Eagles were 8-7, and people are wondering if Jalen Hurts is that guy, right? So for him to flip the switch, like honestly, you would want to build that story this season, right? They have maybe a heartbreaking loss or something like that, and then next season they win the Super Bowl, right? I I just don't think I don't think the rigged stories are as convincing as the stories that you could make if it was rigged, right? That's my thing. So like long story short, no, I don't believe that the NFL is rigged. I think it's a way for us to make excuses for the fact that our team didn't execute, right? Because there's no way the Ravens should have lost to the Titans in 2019 after being 14-2 and no one could stop them, right? And then out of the blue, the defense folds over like a lawn chair, and Lamar Jackson turns the ball over, and Greg Roman calls a game where it's like, this ain't even the same game plan you ran with the whole season. Why are you doing this now? So like, that's the thing. Like, to me, the story is better. Like, if you want to make up a story, like, if you want to rig it to your way, you rig it to make yourself the most money, which also would go back to wanting the Cowboys to be in. Like, the Cowboys would be more the dynasty, right? Like, why wouldn't they? Have y'all seen their fan base? Have y'all heard their fan base? Right? The Cowboys would be the dynasty, because then everybody and there would be like every couple of years there would probably be a Cowboys Steelers matchup. Like, isn't it weird that in the past 20 years the Cowboys and the Steelers haven't faced each other in the Super Bowl, but that would probably make the NFL the most money, right? Because those are the two probably most popular teams out with fans outside of football, or outside of truly understanding, right? Like, or like analyzing the sport or whatever, right? Like, why wouldn't they go that route, right? Like, by that logic, I would go with Cowboys Steelers because that's going to make me the most money. So why wouldn't I rig it in that way, right? Like, why would I rig for the Cowboys to lose? I guess so people can talk about the Cowboys more if they lose. But I mean, Cowboys fans gonna talk enough if they win. They already think they win the Super Bowl next year, right? they don't even trust Dak right now. I think they win the Super Bowl. So this is how it is. Just a little short discussion. I wanted to throw that out there. Ask you guys what you guys think, right? Like, does it make sense that the NFL would be rigged? Does it make And I know, like, I'm familiar with like point shaving. I'm familiar with like, uh, you know, referees getting paid under the table to make games go in the direction that people want them to go, so they can make extra money. Like, I get that. Like, I watched I don't remember the Donahue, I think it was the Donahue documentary on Netflix. I watched it, right? Like, very interesting documentary, right? Like, very interesting. But like, I'm sure that's a thing. But like, for me, when it's just interesting, right? Like it's very, and also too, like, yes, the NFL being more competitive makes them more money, but like, to a certain degree, I mean, to a certain degree, there's a small sector of fans that care about the Jacksonville Jaguars right now. So why let them advance when you can let the Chargers advance, right? Like Justin Herbert, like, this is their new LA team, right? And then now, like, even more of a story. We talked about it before. Now you got an LA team that's won a Super Bowl, and you got an LA team trying to get there, right? Like, I don't know. I just think there's better stories to tell, right? Like there are better stories to tell than the ones that have kind of been made up, right? That have kind of been that should be the stories that are told based off of rigging these games. But anyway, as always, I want you to leave your comments below. What do you think? Is the NFL rigged? Like, is it really? Like, do y'all think it is? Y'all really think it's rigged? Y'all think like possibly that it could be one of those things where it's like, maybe they're deciding the games to make more money and make people more interested. Like, I don't know. 49ers, another team that's got lineage. Like, you wouldn't go with the like, and you can't really help injuries either. But like, Mr. Irrelevant versus the guy who has always kind of been the guy, right? Like, I don't know. But anyway, who knows? As always, down below. Make sure you let me know what you think. What you think about the discussion? Interesting. More, you want more videos that aren't necessarily Ravens related, but more like NFL related? Let me know. And as always, you can see them up top, and I'll put the full screen graphic on the screen. Look, you can always watch on YouTube and Facebook. You can listen to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, etc. I'll throw this up here too for the people watching, just so you can know how to watch and listen to Flock Nation Speaks. Coming up later on this week, I'm gonna talk about my Ravens season in review. What do I think about the Ravens this season? Like, how did they do? Did they disappoint me? Was I happy? Was I okay? Right. We'll talk about that definitely, and get that out for you guys as well. And we'll see what you guys think about it. And we'll sign off for now, and I'll be back later on in the week to talk a little bit more Ravens football and get back to it. But let me know, is the NFL rigged? Are they just trying to make money? Or are the best teams matching up every time, right?